Nico Jilch, welcome back to Fix the Money.
Yeah, Losovsky, it's nice to have you here. In our humble little studio, we're doing this live to tape, basically, for the first time.
Yeah, and hold on, before we even start, it is block number 779595. I know you've been doing that in all of your videos.
779595. We have a Stream Deck plugin now that a Viennese pleb, Quilly, did a Stream Deck plugin. So we'll put this in the show notes for anybody who wants a Stream Deck plugin for the block height, block time.
Quilly, good man. All right. So yeah, Fix the Money. So now domain is fixed, fixthemoney.net, and the website looks great. You've been doing interviews the last couple of weeks and days. You've been busy. We've got all kinds of content written-wise that are coming out. It's pretty busy here at Fix the Money headquarters. So.
It's a Fix the Money headquarters here in 1050 Vienna. Yeah, I mean, and you have been busy, hanging out on Nostr and getting to know everyone.
I've tried. Yeah, that's it's an interesting place, and it's strange that a non-Bitcoin protocol would take up all the room of Bitcoin protocols in the 21st century, but that's where we are.
Isn't Nostr officially a Bitcoin protocol by culture already? I mean, it's basically Twitter with the added feature of Bitcoin.
Well, the funny thing is that Twitter always had this, or not always, but it had this tipping functionality. And you can go and hit the money button on someone's profile, but then it integrates only with Strike. But there's no lightning on posts. You don't have any of the nips where people are zapping each other Satoshis like on Nostr.
Since I logged onto Nostr for the first time, I'm getting like random sets, right? Like all during the day, but it's like people are sending you like single sets.
Okay.
Or like single cents, actually, not single sets probably, but single cents. And then at the same time, people are saying like, okay, Bitcoin is, you can't use Bitcoin for transactions, right? And you need, I mean, we already see that it's working for microtransactions. I'm very proud, and I actually looked for like I compared my last Fix the Money post that I wrote about Nigeria and Lebanon, and I compared it with like the reactions and the engagement that I got on Twitter, where I have like 23,000 subscribers or 23,000 followers, and then on Nostr I have
who's counting?
I have like 800, but the engagement on Nostr was bigger.
Much more, yeah.
Yeah.
I think on Nostr there's much more of an incentive for people to provide feedback, because it's a way that they get to show up on other relays. People see the profile, then your pub key gets out there, right? Because that's the goal of Nostr, is a little bit of public key infiltration. Like you want your key, your public key, your profile to infiltrate as many other relays as possible, so that you're always on someone's client. So every time I pop it open, I see Nico Jilch talking about X and Y, right?
Okay, so this was not planned as a Nostr episode, but I do have to ask, and I'm gonna ask stupid questions here now. Okay, so if we're not on the same relay, I cannot see what you're posting. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the relays, what they're always doing is sort of it's like a megaphone, right? They're taking that information and just spewing it out, and other clients are taking that information in. So it's not that I have to be connected exactly to that relay, because I can also seek you out. And if I have sought you out, if I found your public key, then I'll follow you no matter what.
I see. So if I want you to randomly stumble upon my posts, if you're not following each other,
the best thing to do is to write your Nostr notes to the biggest relays possible. The standard relays like the Damus relay or the Snort Social, wherever most people are going to be, you shoot it out to that, because a lot of people are reading from that relay.
But isn't there a danger that it gets centralized now that we have decentralized social media?
Well, you know, it's interesting because relays don't really have that danger. All they're doing is sort of propagating, right? And the thing about the relays is you can have your own. So a lot of the, now in Umbrel and in Start9 and all these like node in the box things, you can have your own relay that you run at home. I mean, I have my relay, nostr.yael.at, which has been very overloaded.
Am I even using that?
Probably not. I don't know. You have to. Did you actually type it in?
No.
Okay.
I have, but I did type in one other relay from a guy that I follow on Twitter that I know. And he invited me to join his relay, and I'm like, yeah, I'm absolutely joining your relay.
Welcome
man.
to the club.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're using my cluelessness as a journalistic tool here, so I can ask you questions about Nostr, and I can use our time together to learn.
Sure.
I think so. So what I've seen on Nostr so far. Well, first of all, for me, it's a bit of a problem because I actually deleted the Twitter app from the cell phone to have more time to produce content and not to argue with no coiners. And now I'm on Relay, not on Relay, on Twitter, on Nostr, which is also on my phone, but it's a little bit janky and I don't really know what I'm doing, so it's not a big deal. But it's also, I mean, I get it. What I see is that there is many people who are very much into like the technical stuff that are super excited, and
Sure.
I like that. I like the fact that you can combine your public key with your Lightning address.
Yeah.
I think that's really an interesting way forward. It's absolutely fascinating to see Jack Dorsey, who invented Twitter, basically, the co-founder, to see him on Nostr all day long, right?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, what I wanted to know is this nostrplabs.com. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, I'm already joined it. I have an email address and everything, but what is it?
So you have a Lightning address. You don't have an email address. Actually, you don't even have a Lightning address. You have a NIP05 address. And essentially what that does is it's a verification. So there's a small piece of code, a JSON file that's embedded over there on nostrplebs.com that points your public key to your name. So it says Nico equals, npub whatever. So what does that do? It's basically decentralized identity. So it's allowing people to claim their identity, whatever the domain might be, and their name. So Jack has cash.app or something like this.
Uh-huh.
I have like my domain, yael.at, and I just have yael at that. So it's a way to have a badge system, but there is no central committee that organizes the badges. But it's a way to not get scammed, essentially. Because if you have some well-known Bitcoin person who's there and says, hey, check out my wallet, blah, 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 and all of a sudden, they're asking a Lightning invoice for 150,000 sats, you know that's a scammer because it's not actually their domain. So it is a verification tool.
I see.
So technically anybody could do Nico at nostrplebs.com or whatever service it is. So this is the kind of thing is you have the normal tools and then you have people who are building all kinds of different solutions for them. So yeah, we can Nostr all day long, and I'm sure you will, and I'm sure I will. And I hope you're using some of the web clients too, because those are pretty cool. But
I did check them out.
all right, good. So I wanted to do a little bit of a trivia thing with you. Basically, we know that there are a lot of whales out there, Bitcoin whales. They're walking amongst us. Perhaps you've passed one in the street. Perhaps you've seen one at a conference. Maybe it's that guy in the corner who doesn't talk.
Maybe it's you.
It could be me. But there are also governments that happen to be Bitcoin whales. And I wanted to go through the list of governments holding Bitcoin and talk about why they have it, what they do with it, what the plans are, and how I can get it for cheap. Or you, I guess.
And
right?
I think we have to tell the audience that we have a deal that I did not look at the list beforehand because we know that there is a website. It's called, what is it called? Bitcoin
So it's
Treasuries.
bitcointreasuries.net, put together by CoinKite, so the great Canadians over there.
So I know from my shitcoin days, I know that the Tezos Foundation, I think, has about 16,000 Bitcoins.
Okay, let's check you on the fly. So they've increased their holdings.
Oh, really?
Now up to 24,808.
Well, good for them. It's good for them.
All right. Now, however, that does pale in comparison to the numbers by the United States government. How many Bitcoin do you think the U.S. government has?
I have no clue. Are we talking Silk Road here? No, the Silk Road coins were bought from...
Not all of them.
It probably goes into 6 digits.
That's too big.
It's too big.
They're not that big of a whale.
Is it the biggest government? Is the U.S. the government?
It is the biggest government. Yeah, it's not the biggest single entity, but definitely the biggest government.
So let's see. Maybe 35,000.
50,676.
Does it say where they are or where they get it?
Where they
got
are.
them from?
Here's
No,
the
I mean
chain
where they got
address.
them from.
So basically, most of these have come basically from being seized, either from cyber hacking operations or any of the darknet markets. So that's where most of it has come.
But they get auctioned off, right? Or do they keep them?
So here's the thing: is there are auctions that happen, and these things are scheduled ahead of time. They put them out there. Usually they're a bit cheaper than they were at the moment, but as soon as Bitcoin started rising like crazy, mostly 2017 and then 2021, they basically stopped those auctions. So right now they just kind of have them. And it's the US Treasury, and there's not really any indication as to what they're going to do with them, but they're there and locked up.
But that means that the US has well, they have more Bitcoins than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Us
Barely,
two,
yeah.
barely,
Yeah.
and that means that they are a whale.
Yeah.
Are these like under the control? Did you say Treasury?
It is the U.S. Treasury.
So
yeah.
it's like under a centralized control. It's not like different agencies hold different.
I would assume they would have probably just like a Coinbase account. So I don't know. I would assume they don't have some multi-sig setup with a Trezor or Cold Card or something like that. No.
But that's one of the main interesting things talking about nation states holding Bitcoin. So when nation states hold gold, right? You put it in a vault and it's behind like 6 different doors and there is like 12 different guards and there is security measures in place.
Is it usually always one place or do they disperse it in a
That's
country?
a good question. It depends on the country. So Austria has 280 tons of gold and half of it is out of the country. It's most of it is
UK or?
It's in the UK. No, did they get it out of the? No, it's still in the UK. It's still a sizable portion is in the UK and some is in
It
Switzerland.
got stuck at the border after Brexit,
I mean, this is a whole episode, but
Yeah.
there is a reason why. I mean, the Netherlands, Germany, and Austria got the gold back in 2015. 2015 is, for some weird coincidence, it was exactly 70 years after World War II ended, right?
I see.
On the
70-year cycle. Yeah.
I mean, my personal opinion, but that was always my personal opinion. Never got any. My personal opinion is that there was some sort of gentleman's agreement between the European loser countries basically and the Allies, and also because of the Cold War and etc. And we do know that there was a gentleman's agreement from the 70s when the French got their gold back, that the famous de Gaulle sending warships to New York to get gold from the Americans because he never trusted the Americans. The German central bank under Karl Blessing wrote a letter. It's very famous. It's a Blessing letter. You can look it up. And they wrote basically a letter that, Germany, out of the goodness of our hearts, and because we thank you so much for getting rid of those Nazis and also protecting us from the Russians, we will not seek for our gold back. And then Nixon in August 71 said, well, now you're not getting it back either way. And then actually Blessing, he talked about this not very very long afterwards, and he actually said, that was a huge mistake. I should have gotten that gold back.
Okay, so Germany lost all that gold that it had, or
No. Officially, it's still with the Americans. Officially, it's still wherever it is. In the New York Fed, there was a story in I think 2012-ish somewhere, where some German lawmaker went took like Bild Zeitung, which is the biggest tabloid newspaper, and they would go to the New York Fed and just knock on the door and say, "Where's our gold at?" And then of course they would tell them to fuck right off, and then they wrote a whole story about, we went to New York, but we're not allowed to see our gold.
Yeah,
right?
some security guard to stop them. Okay, so they technically have some kind of ownership, but not really.
So that's the thing with gold. Then there's this agreement, this idea that the central banks, they always cooperate, and the gold is not to be touched. If it's somebody else's gold, you keep it for them, and there's lots of trust because they trust each other. They have cigars in Basel, so they know each other, right? It's a very small club, and we are not in it, and but the thing is that this trust, it broke down a little bit in the last couple of years and decades, because it was Chavez first who wanted to get his gold back for Venezuela shortly before he died, and the Bank of England told him to take a hike, and now we see the same thing, not with gold, with Russia, not with gold, because Russia does have all its gold within its borders, but we see the same thing with currency reserves. And actually, when I went to the gold vault in Vienna, they told me that one of the things why we did actually get the gold to Vienna back physically, because it doesn't really make sense from a market's perspective. You cannot sell the gold in Vienna; you have to bring it back to London to sell it.
Well, for that amount, yeah.
But they told me that basically, if something bad happens, something really bad happens, and somebody needs to call up Vlad in Moscow to see where the gas is at, where the oil is at. He's gonna want some payment, and you need to be able to access that payment. So it's basically like a super emergency piggy bank for the Republic of Austria.
Okay, and for those English listeners who might not be familiar with Nico's work, he has been diving into the gold stuff for many years and knows more than a lot of people, and used to write the Gold Journal. I remember this.
I wrote a blog on my old newspaper, Gold Journal, and I'm also writing the de-dollarization chapter for the Incrementum Gold Report from Ron Stöferle, which is always important for me, because once a year I actually get to sit down and do the reading and do the writing.
Yeah,
but
get back to basics.
Yeah, but honestly, I prefer doing like just-in-time stuff that I can immediately finish on the same day.
Absolutely.
I'm just an old journo, really.
Old journo, very true. All right, pop quiz. Nation state number 2 in terms of Bitcoin treasuries.
I think Bulgaria has a lot, and I think that Ukraine also has a lot.
So it's the second guess. Ukraine has 46,351.
Maybe the whole war is about Bitcoin.
You never know about that.
Should we put that as a title? Maybe is the Ukraine war only about Bitcoin? Does Putin want Ukraine's Bitcoin?
I doubt it. But
could get us some clicks on the YouTube.
I'm sure of that. So El Salvador comes in only at number 3.
Only? I mean, 3 years ago, nobody knew what El Salvador even was.
2,381 Bitcoin. And unfortunately, this number is not very well tracked. And there have been attempts to find out what the actual treasury is. But most of the accounting is really done by people looking at the president there, what's his name, Bukele's Twitter account.
Oh,
because
really?
he'll tweet out, El Salvador just, bought the dip at whatever and has 100 more Bitcoin. So basically, they've tracked it through tweets.
Did they buy the dip at 1,600?
They bought a couple. Oh, 1,600?
No, 16,000, I mean.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. Yeah, but they were also buying the dip at, 40,000.
Well, who wasn't?
35.
Who wasn't?
Yeah, many people. And then we have the Republic of Georgia coming in on the list, fairly low, 66 Bitcoin. I don't know exactly where that is from. I would assume this would either come from, because there is a lot of hashing mining that is happening in Georgia.
Yeah.
Could have been for payments, and they do have some kind of interesting new government programs where they're testing things out. Bulgaria is here listed, but no info. So we have to kind of go back and figure out why that is. None of the data set, unfortunately, but
maybe I'm wrong about them holding a lot of Bitcoin, but I think
they just don't have the numbers. So it's on the list, right?
Yeah.
So it's here for a reason, but we don't have that exact
Is there
number.
any EU country on the list besides Bulgaria?
No. After that, it's just companies. We do have some Swiss companies and associations, German companies, but we have no, and the ETFs and stuff. But
does the Ethereum Foundation still hold Bitcoin?
I don't think so. I don't see ETH on here, so no ETH.
So Tezos, which hasn't done jack shit since it was incepted in 2017, still has 24,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah, true, yeah.
And Vitalik has sold all his Bitcoin?
Could be. You never really know with that guy. Fellow Canadian, I don't know. I never can really trust him. But the numbers are really interesting in terms of the companies as well. And, a lot of the money is tied up Bitcoin that is owned by entities is kind of in the market products. So you have your ETFs or your grayscale quasi ETFs, this kind of stuff that's happening right now. And a lot of questions around these companies, at least in the US. So the regulations, bank failures, not knowing if there's going to be a tomorrow for any bank or financial entity tied to Bitcoin.
I mean, we are in deep trouble right now, aren't we? Silvergate Bank, some other bank, and then there's always the question, what about Coinbase really? I mean, they are the custodian for so many products, you know. When you look, so in Europe in the US there has been a lot of debates regarding a Bitcoin ETF, right?
Sure.
So we have that in Europe. We have a couple actually. We don't have only one. We have at least 5 or 6.
Sure.
We have Bitcoin Cash ETFs, for God's sake.
Oh my
right? But the thing is, they're not ETFs. They're ETPs or ETNs. The difference being that if they go bankrupt, you don't get your Bitcoin. You
So
don't.
it's all paper.
It's an IOU basically.
Yeah.
It's an IOU. And there's another rule in Europe which is a bit weird. There's another rule in Europe that an ETF is not allowed to hold just one commodity. I don't know why. I don't, but it is a rule. So that's one of the reasons why we don't have gold ETFs. So the GLD ETF you cannot buy in Europe. And you will not be able, even if there is a real ETF, you won't be able to buy it in Europe. But you can buy the fake ETFs, the ETNs and the ETPs. And I looked into like the main ones, and they of course hold their coins with Coinbase. So if Coinbase goes down, and we already you remember the AGBs, no, that's German AGBs, what do you call it, the small print that you have to sign off if you log on to the terms and conditions,
kind of thing.
They had this thing that you know, all the Bitcoin belongs to them if they go under. So that, I mean, that should make us nervous here.
Yeah, but people should just take their money off of that. I mean, that's all you can do in mass, but why you say we should be afraid is basically price pressure. Because if all of a sudden these banks go down, the number of fiat on and off ramps declines significantly. And, you know, particularly for these banks, that it's so removed from the individual Bitcoin user, right? And this is what I hate about this issue specifically, is that's why Bitcoin was created, is that we didn't have to care or worry about institutions like governments or banks or corporations, right? It's this sovereign man who exists on this monetary network that's decentralized. But now we have to worry about the banks that have this. Do they have enough money? Do they have the licenses? And it's sort of this dual worry that I have too, is that if they have all of these issues and problems and all of a sudden all these custodians go under, then there's either all this Bitcoin that's on the market or inaccessible, and then who knows what happens to price and value.
It's
not the protocol, by the way. That stays the same.
And that's the point here. You always talk, I mean, you have to think in different time horizons and different speeds. On the one hand, yes, we all know why we're talking about this. Obviously, if Coinbase, if Coinbase topples over, we're gonna see Armageddon, right? I mean, in the end, it would be another test for the Bitcoin protocol. It would be another test for Bitcoin for sovereign storage, and we all love and adore this stuff. And if you don't, go get your Bitbox 02 from Shift Crypto. Use Fix the Money to get 5% off here. I shilled it. But at the same time, we still live like in the real world, right?
Yeah.
And in the real world, this structure, for me, it's an alternative system. So it can actually stabilize the old system because we have something to go to, right?
Yeah. Immediate liquidity if we need it. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also the overlap. Like the overlap, and this is what we're talking about here: custodians and banks. And I mean, I don't think it's a surprise that we have banks, and I don't think it's a problem we have banks. I actually think it would be better if there were more banks involved. But the problem is, when you talk to the people, I mean, first of all, there's regulation. So in Europe, we have new regulation that makes it even harder for banks now to hold Bitcoin, and then it's information.
Yeah.
So information means that I mean, how many people who understand Bitcoin on the level that's necessary to explain it to a bank CEO are there in the world, right? And then how does the bank CEO get it through his board and through his company and like the regulators, and what's in it for him too, right? In the end. So we have one bank, and I did a podcast with Joe Martin, who is a German guy who was very important in getting that bank online. It's the Volksbank Raiffeisenbank Bayern Mitte. So
Actually, I saw that. Yeah.
And this guy and they are selling. What are they actually selling? They are helping people get into Bitcoin. They do not hold the Bitcoin as a custodian.
Okay.
So they are basically, so they sell like card wallets, like paper wallets, right? And we can get into the details about the
But
paper wallets.
they hold some Bitcoin and then they sell it to you, or no?
I don't think they actually hold it.
Okay.
I think at this moment
It's just
they
education,
it's
kind of.
education,
Yeah.
and then you can rent like a little safety deposit box and put your Bitcoin wallet in there, right?
Okay, sure. If you
Right?
trust that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it is Germany, but yeah.
it's Germany, which doesn't mean a lot, I guess, but yeah. So
Well, I'm thinking of, if we look at the Bitcoin treasuries list too, we got all the big companies are obviously American. MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, Marathon Digital Holdings, mining company. Tesla still has a good amount, 9,000.
but Tesla only bought Bitcoin to just then send out press releases that they just sold Bitcoin again, right?
They've sold like a little bit, yeah. And then you have Block, obviously. You got Riot Blockchain, and you have Coinbase, which, again, they have thousands upon thousands of Bitcoin that are basically being custodied. But Coinbase does have a non-custodial sort of wallet where you do have a seed phrase. So there are options for doing that. I don't know if these companies are doing it. Really, the safest way and the best way is just for any of these companies to just have a multi-signature wallet somewhere.
Yeah, but that is something. Maybe it is easier than I think it is. But when you look at it from a country perspective, right? That's why we talked about gold in the first place. So the gold is not easy to steal, even if you get into the vault, even if you know enough people who will let you in, even if you're like an insider.
Sure.
It still is super heavy. You need
equipment, you need trucks.
You need equipment, you need trucks, and then you need to sell it on the market. So,
all right, Freedom Convoy, it's your turn. I'm gonna head down south to Fort Knox. Yeah.
So the first, I mean, obviously, if you get to steal a country's Bitcoin, it would be probably easy to see where it's going, like on the blockchain, like with analytics and stuff. So that's like, running away with it is gonna be at least as hard as running away with a country's gold reserves. But is stealing it as hard? I mean,
it's mostly about people compromise, right?
If you have a multi-sig, let's say there's 6 people in the multi-sig, you can still just get the 6 people together and say, how about we take the Bitcoin and go?
You could. And, I think that's something that we're learning with small groups and organizations as well. So it's like a testing ground for what governments could be. That's why you need to have, I always think back to government and how governments are put together and how power is distributed. So you have a legislative branch, executive branch, you have your legislative branch in some other countries. So if you have like these competing power structures, if you have keys with each of these, essentially they all have the incentive to not, or don't have the ability to take it and run with it, right? So you need to have that. But I don't know if we're going to get to that level of sophistication. I think there will be just use of custodians. And this is the issue with a lot of the regulations that are happening around Bitcoin, because again, it's all about around Bitcoin. It has nothing to do with the protocol. It's just about on and off ramps and how it can move. And a lot of the non-custodial products that exist out there, which you should use, in which you have your seed phrase and your backups, that is something that just can't be regulated. And they're trying in the European Union, unhosted wallets, this type of terminology. But it's all going to come down to those fiat on and off ramps and the custodians. And if custodians start going down left and right, I don't know how much more people need to hear it, that they have to just withdraw to their own storage. I mean,
even Gary Gensler is on TV saying it's not your coin.
not your keys, not your coins.
No,
Yeah,
first
100%.
he said not your keys, not your crypto, and then he changed it, right?
Well, then he was talking to a good audience and he understood. But I mean, that kind of stuff is why Bitcoin is special, why it is different than all the others. Plus the decentralized network that powers it and, helps connect all the information and all the transactions or ordinals, God help you. That is something that you just cannot have with your money. And you've done a great job the last couple of weeks in going through some of the money failures in countries like Lebanon and Nigeria. I've actually read a lot more about what's happening in Nigeria with the eNIDA, the capital controls that they're having, how much you can take out of the ATM. I mean, we kind of laugh about that, but that happened in Cyprus not too long ago as well. It happened in Greece not too long ago as well. So this is always something that's in the background. And hopefully people are just preparing themselves more and more. That's all I'll say.
It's something, I mean, maybe I'll start with Suli Kobayashi from Lebanon, who told me that basically his parents had their money taken away several times by the government, right? And they would still be trusting in the government-run banking system and in the state-run banking system. I think that many Bitcoiners are probably underestimating the trust that people put into government institutions because we put so little trust into them, right?
Well, if you came into Bitcoin through Austrian economics, you have one view, and if you came into it through tech, you have another view, and if you came into it by number go up, you have a totally different view. So,
if you're still stuck in the number go up, you're looking at Teslas right now, right? And I'm not trying to shield, I'm just making fun of them. But the thing with what I learned, so first of all, it's absolutely amazing that I can just hop on Twitter and connect with Bitcoiners all over the world and just spend time talking to them on the podcast. Honestly, one of the reasons I'm doing it as a podcast, and we'll also launch it on Fix the Money, the YouTube channel. One of the reasons is because most of the talks that I have with Bitcoiners around the world, I can just use for the podcast, and it's good for them, it's good for me, it's good for the world. So why not put it out there, right? Okay. Sure. So I talked to Suli and I talked to Mary in Nigeria, and Mary was, Nigeria is a fascinating country, man. It has more than 200 million people. It's the biggest country in Africa. It's gonna have almost 800 million by the end of this century. It's going to be close to what, it's almost going to overtake China by the end of the century, because China is going to, basically China is going to collapse because of demographics. I have my theory. Have I told you my theory?
Hit me with your
So
theory.
my theory on the Chinese, it always comes down to the Americans being smarter than everybody else, right? So my theory is this: in 1971, Nixon ends the gold standard. In 1972, Nixon would go to China and bring them online, right? Bring this gigantic this gigantic country into the world economy. Not flipping a switch, but taking the first step, right? And then for the rest of the century, and even going into this century, the US would work together with China to build China up, right? Especially after the Europeans started the euro, they stopped buying US treasuries, right? They stopped structurally enforcing the dollar standard. They went on their own euro standard, and then China just took over and ran with it until 2013. So in 2009, China would say that they want to get out of the dollar system for the first time, and in 2013 they said we're not going to buy any more treasuries. But the thing with the one-child policy is so catastrophic. They are absolutely royally fucked. China is not. Ray Dalio is wrong. China is not going to be the next big empire. China is going to collapse because no country can survive, and especially not a rigid political regime like we have it in China can survive the population collapse that's coming. And it's not just that they are below replacement level like we in the West are. They're only replacing with guys, right? So and guys cannot have children on their own, right? So my theory is that basically the Americans said, "Oh, we'll build you up, but you know what? You're too many. You're too many. How about that one-child policy?" That sounds like a good idea for a good communist country. Let's try that, right? Knowing full well that basically, looking at what they did under Mao and whatever, they are like economically they're just too stupid. And I have to say one thing. I mean, I try to learn a lot about China and Russia and geopolitics. So I'm an idiot. I don't know anything. I know that they live in a whole different structure. And there's an argument to be made that China is the only country that has a social structure going back thousands of years, and is basically there. You can make an argument that China is the only civilization that we still have, like as a coherent structure. But in the current structure, under this insane communists with that demographics that we have right now, China is going to collapse. And that's why that's why I think, my personal opinion, if you really want to go there, and if you're still listening to the mad ramblings of Nico in Vienna, my personal opinion is China's going to collapse, and the US is going to take Bitcoin and put the nail in the coffin, because the communists cannot deal with hard money.
Well, it's a theory.
It's a theory.
Well, look, one of the best, I would say, Western academics on it is Frank Diktota.
Peter Zeihan.
Is one for you? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Frank
I'm sorry.
Diktota. So he wrote a book. He's written a couple of them that was about the Great Leap and about Mao and just sort of how things have evolved. And the issue one thing that Thomas Sowell identified in his books, so talking about economics, is that most of the innovators that come out of the Chinese system, leave and go abroad. So some of them remain loyal and become spooks and spies. That's what's happening in Australia. That's what's happening in Canada right now, if you guys are following that in any way.
Aren't you supposed to be like spy for China?
Technically.
Always?
Technically, yeah. But then you have a lot of them who, and this is what Thomas Sowell kind of recognized, become what they call minority entrepreneurs. So they move to parts of Africa. And yes, they'll start firms and have exclusive contracts for Chinese companies, but then they start branching out on their own. Once the capitalism hits their face and goes down their body and they actually feel it and the wealth from it, they actually start branching out. And that's kind of what Hong Kong presented for a long time, is this opportunity for Chinese mainlanders to actually basically self-custody their wealth more so than on the mainland.
No, they just buy up Vancouver, right?
Well, yeah, the apartment buildings in Vancouver, the apartment buildings in New Zealand, and the houses in New Zealand. So all of these countries, have all these taxes that they have. If you're a foreign person and try to buy an apartment in Canada, it's 15% tax. Doesn't matter if you're from Austria or China. Same thing. But
15% tax does not shock me if I come from Austria.
Well, yeah, of course not.
If Austrians ever buy up real estate en masse in Canada, you're not going to stop us by 15% tax.
No, there won't be. That's savings. What are you talking about? But it's interesting about the China thing, and we're seeing a very interesting parallel with TikTok right now, and how institutions are dealing with TikTok. I mean, TikTok is just so pervasive now. Politicians using it, and there's now this decree that government devices can't have TikTok installed, which, by the way, if you're a government bureaucrat who has TikTok on your government phone, you should be fired anyway, but I don't make the rules. But now in the European Union, the United States, Canada, Australia, no government phones can have TikTok downloaded, because we know that the information is accessed in Beijing. We know that they have all kinds of information. We know that the Chinese military hacked TransUnion and Equifax, which probably doesn't mean anything to you, but that's 167 million Americans' credit records. So my information was in that hack. This was back in 2018. There's this huge hacks of the credit agencies, and it emanated from the Chinese military. So they have all this information. They've got all your TikTok dances that has been saved. Not to say that they're going to turn everything into a prison camp, but there's a possibility for control down the line. And
do you think that anybody working at the European Commission is already on Nostr instead of TikTok?
Oh, I'm sure there are a few. At the Commission, I mean, look, the interesting thing about the European institutions is that you do have a lot of good freedom people who are on the inside, who are basically stopping the worst ideas. And I would say the Commission overall, compared to the Parliament, is just much better.
Oh yeah, that's what I heard too.
The commission, at least, is a liberalizing force. They're actually trying to open up markets.
So I'm not gonna. I mean, I do talk to people within the Austrian government every now and then.
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
not going to repeat what somebody pretty high up told me about the European Parliament recently, but it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, and you see this with Bitcoin as well. I mean, you basically have socialists, right? Who have no idea what they're doing. They just hate it when people do something on their own. And you have socialists doing.
The government is the only thing we all belong to.
And they are. I mean, they first they like do a horrible legislation, and they try to stop proof of work mining. And by the way, and then the argument is always, yeah, we can ban proof of work in Europe because nobody is using it anyway. But that's not true, because especially on the small scale, I'm talking about TerraHash in Munich, who are doing an energy lab and who are trying to figure out how to use Bitcoin mining as an energy sink. And both a first buyer and the last buyer of energy, right? So the first buyer would be you get a new energy source as a company, for example, especially German companies. They have huge energy bills. So if you get a chance to get like photovoltaic or something like that, solar energy, but maybe you make more energy than you need, or maybe you make energy but you don't need the energy straight away because you don't have the machines or whatever, right? You need a first buyer, and then even if you have the machines, you need a buyer of last resort if there's more energy than you need, right? So they are doing stuff like that, and then somebody invites me on Telegram. Somebody invites me.
How's your trading going?
How's my trade going? And somebody on Telegram, they invite me and tell me, you want to come into the solo mining group. We have a German solo mining group, right? For people who have like one S9 running, or who are like, or even there's like USB mining, right? And doing it together just to we'll join that with your miner, but that's another story. And I log onto the Telegram group. It's 600 people. And I'm like, what the hell? How is there 600 people? I didn't even know that you can have like different sections of Telegram groups. Like it's like a forum, and you only reach that when you have 500 people. So, and I'm not really into like Telegram mass chats, right? Because you have no time to read it. Yeah. So now we covered Nostr, we covered TikTok, and we covered Telegram. We talked about Twitter. Did we talk about Twitter? I don't know. I don't want to talk about Twitter.
It's a shitcoin now.
How we did we miss anything important? I didn't really talk a lot about Nigeria and Lebanon. So the thing with Nigeria and Lebanon, I mean, you can listen to it on the podcast, and I hope people have listened to it anyway. I think it's really important to see the difference between us in the so-called West. We always think we're so rich and so great, whatever. Us in the so-called West compared to people who actually need the technology of Bitcoin immediately. Yeah. And when and then I look at it and I talk to many Bitcoiners and I ask them where how did they get into Bitcoin, and some have a similar story than you do. They used it as a transactional currency first, actually. Maybe to buy drugs, maybe to pay people at the other side of the world, or maybe to just get along in Nigeria. And I think that these people have a special relationship to Bitcoin. And I finally understand why so many old school Bitcoiners would insist on using it as a transactional currency, and why it's so important to use it to buy beer at the Bitcoin conference. I get it that it's not technically necessary to use it all the time, but I do also get that, like, even from a philosophical point of view, we need that.
Yeah,
we need that, because I don't want my bank calling me, asking me questions about some wire transfer. That's none of their business.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the problem of the fiat system, is they make it their business to know, and it is one thing that you can already start opting out of. And I do the small test. Everybody kind of does it. You have some service, you use something. Do you accept Bitcoin?
Yeah, exactly.
I want some sats for that.
We have a new babysitter, right?
Congratulations! They're hard to find.
She's still in school, and I'm like, and of course I asked her if she accepts Bitcoin, but she didn't. And she looked at me like I was crazy.
Did you mean Tezos? Yeah.
Should we call this the Tezos episode?
No, we shouldn't. But I would say that starting to use it much more for ordinary things is important and good. And one thing that is interesting, relating it back to Nostr, because I always ask this question. It's like, how many Nostr people do you know in real life, right? So how many Bitcoiners do you actively know in your day-to-day life? How many of them can you interact with if you go out for beers or have a meal? Someone pays and then everybody else pays up in Bitcoin. How many people can you actually do that with and have, your own network that you create and make the use cases? You start using the Lightning channels. I mean, I've had my Lightning node now for a couple of years, and understanding how to balance Lightning channels, liquidity, understanding how payments work or don't work, or how the paths are. I mean, that is something that we have to work out. And unfortunately, most people aren't doing that because everyone is kind of in HODL mode, HODL mentality, right? But then you can also use it, understand how the technology works. And I think that's what I'm most excited by, is that there are other tools that people are using. There are all kinds of instances where people can use it. I mean, I'm trying to use it as much as I can when I get my hair cut, when I use servers online, when I'm trying to buy any kind of food. I mean, Vienna's kind of tough. We need many more of these.
I mean, I have to say that when it comes to the technical stuff, but people know that, I have like imposter syndrome, right? So you know way more about like Lightning channels and nodes.
Yeah,
and
but that's
stuff like that.
All that stuff is really just tweaking
It's
and
just
learning, and it's and the thing is we're always at the building blocks and the building stages, and then once the shiny clean cash apps come out, it just makes it easy for everyone.
Yeah.
And then it's intuitive.
Yeah. No. I see that. I just. It's a time thing. But on the other hand, it's just. Right now, I'm just way too busy, getting into camera gear. So
apparently.
we can tape this, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Well, Yael, can you send us off, please?
Yeah, well, Nico, it was a pleasure to chat. I'd invite everybody to head on over to fixthemoney.net. Check out the brand new website, solo domain. Looks beautiful. There'll be more podcasts. There'll be articles. I mean, content being thrown at you every week. So we've got
signal, no noise.
Yes, only signal. And basically interviews with people from all over the world, all walks of life, articles that are kind of pressing all the matters of the moment. So very cool to catch up on them, Nico. And let's talk again soon.
Well, thank you for doing this again with me. Thank you for everybody for listening and tuning in. It's really great for me to be able to stay connected to the wider Bitcoin ecosystem, because everybody, in the end we all speak English, right? But then there is these subsections, like in the Telegram forum, everybody has a subsection, and I spend most of my time in the German subsection, and it's nice. We should probably do a whole an episode about like what's going on in Germany and in the German speaking world. I think people would be very interested in that. But it's great to connect with people. I did another interview with Coin Stories podcast. No, not Coin Stories. I'm sorry about that. It's not Coin Stories. Coin Stories was Natalie Brunel's, right? Rabbit Hole Stories. So that's two guys from London who are doing well, your personal rabbit hole story, right?
Nice.
And I think it's a good idea. It's basically it actually they stole it from the German Der Weg, which is a German podcast. It's a subsection of the 21 podcast. It all gets very complicated once the Germans
Nodes
get
upon
involved.
nodes upon nodes.
But what I wanted to say is I really enjoyed this very much, and until next time.
Yeah.